Welcome to tonight's episode of Culture of Paint. Over the next hour or so, we're going to be taking a look at what's caught our eye over the last couple of weeks in the miniatures painting world. For our main segment, we're doing a great big hobby Q&A with a bunch of questions been sent in by our patrons, so we'll work our way through those. And we'll close the show out as normal, taking a look at what our hashtag paint cultists have been up to. Culture of Paint's aimed at a mature audience, and we might discuss adult themes and use explicit language. Now let's talk about paint. Okay, and we're back. Let's check. Is the chat in there? It is. Is Matt there? Everybody's there. Fantastic. Good evening, everyone. I'm Henry, and joining me as usual tonight is Andy, or our Andy, Matt, and Rich. And, well, what are we on? Episode 8, 9?
Veterans 8. Now, mate.
Not 10 yet, is it? 8. We're nearly there.
Veterans.
We're nearly there. Eh? That's pretty cool. And tonight is back to our usual patrons only live shows. So if you want to jump in on the live shows, guys, sign up to the Patreon. Gives you a chance to interact with us, and we will do the odd public one when we get the special guests on. But it's good to see people in the chat, see what questions we got. To be honest with you, probably going to ignore you most of tonight anyway, seeing as we got like a billion questions from you all over the last week that we need to get through. So we may as well get cracking. This week, what's caught our eye?
Stuff.
We're going to truncate this one ever so slightly just so we can spend a bit more time on the questions, but this one popped up in the chat we were having. I think all of us saw it on a similar day and we're like, oh, have you seen this, have you seen this, have you seen this? It's awesome. Like Merak minis, I would really suggest you go and check them out. There's some fantastic pieces on there. I know they're going to be entering the MPO as well, so we get to see a few more of them, but this is just yeah. What's the artist's name that does Sin City and stuff? Frank something.
Miller, isn't it?
That's it. This is yeah. You see the odd cell shaded one, don't you? Yeah, but this is just yeah, it's just great.
It's the execution, isn't it? Because we've seen stuff similar, and we've seen stuff with backdrops, cartoon style, but like it's the backdrop, and you actually can't really tell it's a backdrop that much. It's like really the 2D thing, and yeah, you just can't argue with it. Not seen it done before in this exact way, and it's been done to a super high level. And I think with Instagram and seeing millions of miniatures so often now, you don't get wowed or go, that's really different often, do you? You're like, well, that's really good,
yeah,
and that's really good, but not that's really different. Well done. So can't fault it, really.
It's fantastic. And as I say, go and check out their Instagram as well, because there's just some wicked pieces on there.
Yeah, she's trying loads of different stuff, I think.
I'm quite curious how they've got the black so black as well. It's
do you wonder if it's
it's
what
really
you call
deep.
It?
Banter.
Yeah, I was going to say, or 3.0 or whatever.
Yeah,
could be.
Do you think it's because it's only next to white, and then the photography would
possibly
make it seem really big?
But I would have thought on that shoulder there would be a bit more grey in there, especially with if there's any like musculature or whatever it is. It would just shine a bit, but it's like proper deep black.
Let's ask. We're going to miss.
Do you know where the bust's from?
Yeah, it's Arnau's company, Beyond Miniatures. It's one of them. They've done 2 academic busts. This, and then there's like an alien one. So yeah, I think it's Beyond Miniatures from Arnau.
Wicked. I'll pop that link down in the description because it will relate back or relate forward. I don't know what the word is to a question we got coming up in a bit actually. And then the other big thing this week, obviously, Games Workshop have got their Warhammer Fest online thing that they're doing every evening this week, showing reveals and stuff that they've got coming up over the next few months. And it was the Age of Sigmar one on Monday. All of us are big fantasy miniatures fans. I think it was, I mean, personally, I loved it. The undead stuff was wicked. But this dude, this Kragnos, we can't really tell from this picture, but he's an absolute whopper, isn't he? Like, when they showed him in the army with all the other models in there, he's enormous.
Absolute
he's not small.
It's good to see them embracing the whole 75mm.
Pictures.
It's
market.
literally
Yeah.
that centaur, that 75 mil centaur I already did. So I'd like another one. So thanks.
Yeah.
But yeah, what do you think?
I want it. I want it. I want it bad.
It's really good.
He's awesome. I also love the that he's like just a generic destruction guy that you can sort of fold into. Me and Henry, we've spoken a lot about generic destructions or generic chaos armies and stuff, and it's really cool that they're leaning into that a little bit. That it is, he hasn't got a race; his race is gone, but he's the god of what is
Earthquakes, isn't it?
I know he hates the frog. He really hates the frog.
Yeah, the frog put him. The frog put him in like a coma for like a couple of thousand years.
What
So,
a pair of
typical,
models,
typical frog bullshit.
Yeah.
How good
But
are
yeah, I
those
just think it's great.
It's a lovely model. We just had someone mention in the chat as well this evening. So we're recording this on a Wednesday night. So this evening's was the Black Library reveal. And they showed us some lovely little Gaunt's Ghost models. So if you enjoy Black Library fiction, it's one of the original sort of sci-fi series they did. It's very cool to see them doing some little homage models for the characters in that. That will
Great
be
to see the Imperial Guard getting a lot of love in that.
Well, you never. Maybe it portends something. We will find out. But yeah, I certainly felt Kragnos was a bit of a standout, and I think the rest of you guys did as well. So that's why we've popped him in here for our pick of the week. Interesting as well. It comes with an alternate face as well. Just have been doing that a little more recently, putting sort of alternate heads on their characters. Yeah,
I think Croak comes with an alternate one as well.
Yeah. And it's sort of there's no intention of them being a different model. It's just a different look. I mean, I can only assume it comes from the sprue technology now being just so good that they can cram so much on a sprue.
Do you think they try out different ideas? And I can't decide which face.
And that's it, right? And now they're like, well, we don't have to choose. Have a bunch of them. But it's very cool. It's very nice. And I think for showpiece models, it's just that little extra bit of sort of individualism you can sort of add, isn't it, to yours? Great paint job as well. Really like that paint.
Yeah, all the paint jobs are really doing it for me at the moment. Croak, I was like, wow, that looks like a horrible long job.
Can you imagine painting that?
No, I love it, but fair play, Heavy Metal Team, that looks awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty rad, eh? It's pretty rad. So let's crack on with the main segment. So we put the word out to the patrons a couple of weeks ago that we wanted to do a Q&A. Whilst we're sort of in the beginnings of the show, we wanted to try out a few different formats. So that's why we had a guest host on last week with Pete. That's why we did the interview with Matt. And we wanted to try one of these Q&A, sort of hobby Q&A episodes out as well to see what the reaction to that is like. So we put the shout out and we got bombarded, which is great. So it's given us plenty to have a natter through. Been through all of them, kind of broke them down into categories, and we shall see how it works. And all we're going to do, guys, is just keep going until we either run out of questions or run out of time. So let's kick it off. Yeah, no, that's the problem. They're not really. There's like one or two quick fire ones, but there's quite a few of them are very thought provoking questions. So we will see. But the first one is coming in, and this is sort of in the personal category, I guess. And this is from Ben. So this one's for all of us. If you had to choose one miniature that you've painted, what is it that you're most proud of? And I've no idea what order these slides are in. So whose is up first, Matt?
Me. No way.
So Rich, what's the deal?
Yes. So I was thinking about this. It took me a long time to figure which one I wanted. I don't think this is the best thing I've painted, but for me, it's the thing that I'm proudest of for multiple reasons. The number one thing being that it looks exactly like I imagined it was going to be in my head.
Nice.
Which is why I picked it. Like I've painted some stuff before that I think technically is a lot better. Things for competitions and stuff that won things that I was proud of, but they probably changed a few times during the actual process of painting them. Whereas this, I had a very, very clear idea in my head, and I absolutely loved it. This is one of the projects that I picked up, and especially for me, it's really rare for me to pick something up, have a plan, execute the plan, finish it, boom, like literally bang, 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 bang. Like it's a to me a 135 scale kit. that I kind of sci-fi'd a bit.
I was going to say,
so
you've tweaked it, surely. Like,
I put a long barrel on it. I've put some like stowage from like the Lemon Rust kit on it, and some wires and stuff like that on there. So it's brilliant to build. And the painting, like the circle dot camo, was just something I randomly tried. First time I tried it, and it just went really, really, really well. And I just absolutely loved painting it. So much so that I was kind of bummed out when I finished it. So yeah, that's why I picked it.
It's lovely. It's kind of one that you sit on the shelf and smile at, right? When you're sort of wandering around. Yeah.
I you can tell it's my favorite because out of all of them, all the models I've got in like my cabinets and stuff, I will randomly just take it out and look at it for a while.
Nice.
Whereas like some of my golden demon entries, I don't even know where they are. But that I will take it out and I'll look at it from time to time and just be like, oh, that was great.
Oh, good times.
Yeah.
No, it's rad, mate. It's rad.
I'm surprised at that pick.
Yeah, I suppose you know Rich's sort of collection fairly well, right?
Well, we were chatting earlier, and he was like, "Oh, what shall I pick for the poddy?" And I was like, "This," and he was like, "Nah." And then I sort of went back to work and didn't know what carried on the discussion. So I'm like,
it was tough
because I said the killer can. You see?
Yeah.
That's probably the best thing, right?
That's probably the thing. Yeah, that's probably the best thing I've ever painted. But yeah.
No, that's awesome. Really nice, mate.
Thanks.
Okay, what we got up next, Matt?
We have my one.
Hey.
More tanks.
More tanks.
They're just the best.
Happy days.
It's kind of the same as Rich. This is probably the only miniature. Well, it's not miniature. It's bloody massive. That I've put together, and it's just every step of the way, it's just gone well. Like I haven't wanted to take the paint off it. I haven't wanted to start again. It's just building went fine, other than it being a bit crooked. It doesn't sit on the plinth particularly well. Like,
they've got a bit of a rock to them, don't they?
You do that like little thing. But the building went well. Like the paint went on fine. It was fun to paint. I was just like, I didn't really have a plan in mind. I just kind of winged the whole thing, and it just went well. It was the favorite thing I've ever painted, just because I enjoyed painting it.
It's awesome.
The Macarius tanks are just fantastic.
Love tanks.
Best.
Yeah, they're sort of.
So I picked a tank now.
They're definitely what got me. I wouldn't say hooked when I came back in, but it was sort of. I think I saw the Marauder bomber from Forge World when I got back in the hobby, and I was like, "What is that?" And then obviously clicking on that led me to Forge World and all the madness therein. It definitely influenced the way I paint. Coming
tanks and walkers.
Just they're so
the best things.
They're so good. So did you sort of, you say you didn't go in with a plan at all?
No.
Like other than just a colour? Did you want to practice techniques on it? Was it literally a pleasure project?
It was just a bit of fun. It was for Golden Demon. Like I wanted to do a vehicle for Golden Demon, and I just couldn't. I didn't want to pick a plastic kit because some of the plastic kits are a bit. I'm just not super fond of them. Like the Forge World ones are just fun. They're like big.
It's a proper tank, isn't it?
It's a proper tank, yeah. And I was like, cool.
Yeah,
and I was reading, what was it, the Varax campaign at that time. And I was just like, cool, just do that. They had Macarius there, so paint one of those, all desert up, chip the hell out of it, and it was fun. Because you just make it messy, but it looks neat, messy, sort of. If that makes sense.
It does. You're right. It's quite well defined, isn't it? Even though it's really scuzzed up.
Yeah,
it's the best way to paint, man. It's the most fun way to paint. Easy. Right, what's up next?
It's me.
Wait.
Yeah,
it's quite a recent one.
Yeah, I think my top 3 are all in the last 12 months, to be honest.
That's great.
Which is nice. Which is good. Yeah, every one I've considered was post-COVID, so there's a positive. I picked this one because there are a few reasons, but like I love the look of it. plain and simple. But I nearly didn't finish it, and I had a proper battle. And to get a good outcome after having such a terrible time doing it was cool. And to be honest, I probably started it when I was most miserable because of COVID, and then managed to push through and finish it, and was super happy with it. And it was really hard into technical painting, and I was just basically in a bad mood all the time. So it put me in a good mood finishing it, but I put it down for a good couple months. So I did have to work at it, and I probably got the nicest response from sort of my peers, which was really good. So quite easily my favorite. Really, the only other ones are like the Cult of Paint models, because they're ours and I do love them, but this just nips it a little bit. So there you go.
Awesome. I remember you painting this, and you the key broke once, and like it took a long time. And I remember you doing different things and stripping it and trying different things on it, and so glad that you finished it, because I love it. It's really, really good.
I properly had to push through, because it kept going wrong, but I liked the idea so much I made myself finish it. I guess
that was really cool, because you had that clear idea. Like, you remember you were telling us about it, and you showed me like a plinth with a bit of a dead tree on it, and you're like, should be sat there, and there'll be a key, and there'll be these little things creeping up to it, and I was like, okay, cool. And then you did it. Is that fair? It's cool.
I really want to enter it in a comp, to be honest.
I was going to say, it's a real shame it's not been at a competition, that one.
It's waiting.
I like the post that you put up, the little caption, the description when you posted this about the struggle behind it. I quite like that about this piece with you, because it's like kind of proves that everyone has that. Like, it's like trying to really brute force something through sometimes.
I really want. I did have to fight for it, and so that's why it's my favorite. Because my second favorite's like the wolf girl from Cult, but that was just easy. It just happened, and it went so well. So I didn't rage and throw it across the room. It's just like, it's good. So nice. That's it. I could talk about it a long time. I'll do a video on it. There you go.
There you go. Love it. Coming soon. Thanks, mate. And lastly, that must mean it's my one. So this is kind of like what Rich said. I also perhaps am guilty of reading the question when it was first written and then completely ignoring it and thinking it said something else. I forgot the proud bit. But I guess I am a bit proud of it. The reason I picked this, I painted this years ago.
I've never seen this.
4 or 5, donkeys ago. But basically, a good friend of mine, Betsy, came over for a hobby afternoon, and we just challenged each other. We said, right, pick something and you paint it this afternoon. That's it. You're not allowed to paint it after that, and it's got to be finished.
Nice.
And I suppose I am quite proud of knocking it out in a few hours. Like, it would still be unpainted in the box with all the other similar models if I hadn't done it that afternoon. But the fact is I've sort of kept hold of it. Even when I've moved house and stuff, I've kind of looked after it, and sort of popping in the cabinet and stuff, because it came out well enough. It's the idea in my head is what it looks like, but also it was just such a nice afternoon hobbying. So it's always good memories when I see that in the cabinet or on the shelf.
That's cool.
I really need to do it a bit more. The old, you've got 4 hours or whatever to paint, get it done.
Let's do it soon.
Really, and it taught me a few things at the time, like I would use just one color to lighten other colors to create highlights, because it was quick rather than sorting through the paints. At the time when I was doing this, I wasn't really that au fait with lots of theory and all the rest of it. It was just like, okay, well, if I've got this sort of off-white color, I can use that to highlight all the rest of it. Obviously, there's a ton of oils and grime and bits and bobs on it. But the main reason I picked it is because it was just a really fun afternoon's painting. Even though, like Rich was saying, and Matt, actually, there's many models I know I've painted to a higher standard. There's not many that I've got. Also, the dude in the middle looks just like an old director I used to work with, so it always makes me chuckle as well. It's good times. Love those old inquisitorial minis.
What are those minis
stuff, right?
So that's it, mate. Yeah, it's memories. So the chap in the middle's one of the, I think he's an astropath, that one.
Yeah.
Or navigator, one of the two. And then the guys either side are the Solar Auxilia from Forge World, and I dremeled their heads out and stuck the heads in from some Mechanicus kit. Yeah, Mechanicum kit.
Cool.
The Smash robot heads.
Nice.
So good. They look amazing like that. There's so imagine a whole solar army.
Oh, mate, I was like, oh, maybe I'll do an army with this. And then it's like, you get 5 of them in like a 25 quid box or whatever. I'm like, you know, it's maybe not when there's like 150 dudes or whatever. But yeah, when I dug them out earlier, yeah, we never know. But yeah, so thanks very much for that question, Ben. Nice bit of nostalgia for us. The next question has come in, and this one I thought was really interesting, as most of them are, but this one particularly given what me and Andy in particular have discussed when we started out the miniatures from Cult of Paint. So this is from Tim. Ask about the subject matter of sculpts. I'm starting to feel only a little tired of everything having to do with killing stuff. I would love to hear what manufacturers you like for a change of subject, and also what you think in general of the majority of miniatures lines having to do with fighting of some sort. Wouldn't it be cool to see a more diverse pool of subject matter when it comes to the minis we paint? Well, yes, it would, Tim. But Andy, you can talk about this because I know this is something we've discussed a lot.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the reason, first of all, that there's so many miniatures is because miniatures that are fighting is that most miniatures come from war games, right? So Warhammer, Age of Sigmar, 40k, this is all battle stuff, and most miniatures are for gaming, and gaming normally involves some fighting, doesn't it? So just the majority is always going to be that way. But then there's all the other manufacturers that aren't Games Workshop that can diversify into other subjects, and I think it's kind of those smaller, more boutique-y brands that are going to offer that for you. I would say that the bigger brands are bigger because gaming's more popular, I would say, than just painting. So if you'd agree with that. But yeah, I think if you just look into some very niche little small brands, eventually you'll find some stuff that isn't fighting, and you might find stuff that's like goblins and they're still like very fantasy, but they're not necessarily having a scrapple with a gun, are they? They might.
There's certainly a lot more variety when it comes to non-warfare themed when you have the bigger models, isn't there? Busts and your 54 mils and your 75 mils. So I mean, like, you know, the bust on screen at the minute is one of our ones from the recent Daegard thing. Then there's Anna, who was the protagonist from our sci-fi range, and again that range there was a lot of diversity we wanted to try and get in there. But this whole idea of her and her crew were exploring and stuff, that was the driving theme. Whilst within it there is a sort of one dude who's quite actiony, and you know, he's got his lance and all the rest of it. A lot more of it was to do with this idea of exploration. I think when it comes to smaller scale miniatures, so your 28 mils, I mean, I always love walking around shows like Salute, where you have a lot of these smaller manufacturers, like you say, Andy, who will often do, even if the miniatures perhaps are designed to be used in war games, they might do your civilians. You know, like you say, there's some which, whilst the game may focus around combat to a degree, they aren't necessarily wielding weapons and all the rest of it. Again, perhaps those tend to be a bit more comedic. You know, but the certainly if you step up in scale, the variety is there. But I think you hit it straight on, mate. Is that the vast majority of people come to miniatures painting through tabletop gaming, and the vast majority of tabletop gaming is warfare related. I mean, you've got this lovely bust Dave Colwell painted recently. I forget the name of it now.
It's Robot Rocket is the brand, though. I don't know the name.
But you know, there's. I mean, I would even say when you start looking at the larger scale brands, it's 50-50 at least, if not more in favour of non combat. miniatures. So yeah, I think perhaps with the advent of 3D printing, we talked about the other week, you might find that designers that might be a good one to go and look at. Maybe sites like Shapeways and whatnot, see what's on there, what subjects people have put on just for the joy of sculpting, and then you can get to paint them. But yeah, I mean, what do you think, Rich?
I agree with what you said, to be honest. I mean, I think it's hard because, why would you want models of, well, for me personally, if I want models, I want them to have a lot of background and a lot of setting. And I think it is just a little bit easier to have them combat orientated because it's easier to come up with that, why they're there, what they're doing. But yeah, I agree with the bigger scale stuff. I think there's some brilliant models out there that aren't necessarily fighting based. I can't remember the exact name of them. Do you remember the ships, the junkers? They're like flying fishing ships.
Oh yeah, they were amazing.
They're amazing kits. They're massive. They're about that big, and they're things like that. I think are really good. You just think you need to look a little bit better, look a little harder for them.
Just small brands, basically. Hunt down the small brands, right?
I do think though sometimes you'll see one because we're so used to seeing like weapons based or fighting based miniatures. You get kind of used to it, but some of the models that I've seen that have been really like, wow, that's incredible, have been completely non-related because you're so used to seeing like he'll have a sword or a gun or whatever, and then when they're completely not, I think it's quite nice. Like an event, you see like a sea of plinths or a sea of models all fighting, and then every now and then there'll just be one lovely little like moment that isn't anything to do with like violence. I think it's great.
Yeah, there's I forget the company's name, which is crap considering what the question was. But they do lots of little critters, sort of larger scale. But but I suppose that's difficult, isn't it? Because that's almost more just a study, isn't it, of an actual something, as opposed to a bust of Leonardo da Vinci. It's not even that we're talking about. I'm fairly sure Tim's question is focusing more on your small scale stuff. Hassle-free miniatures. I know they would often have miniatures often from IPs such as Doctor Who and stuff, which again, it's still conflict, isn't it? A lot of the time, no matter what you do.
And it's an existing IP, right? I think it's interesting to get a non-copied IP, non-warfare. The one that stood out to me was another one from Dave, and it's just a girl drinking a cup of coffee. But that got such an online response. Like people like, this paint job's incredible, and they were talking about it, and it's a girl drinking a cup of coffee. So it's like the most mediocre subject, but it was amazing paint job. The sculpt's good. So there's some cool stuff out there, but you do need to hunt it down because often these small brands have maybe produced one or two models. There's a brand called Bold Miniatures, and I think they've literally done 3 or 4 models so far. And there's a girl who's blowing some bubble gum, and she's got like headphones on. But like, there's all these cool things are out there. But I think the best thing to do is probably follow all the guys that are likely to do the box art, and then you'll see the manufacturers from that, right?
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, it sort of brings us on to what the next batch of slides are going to be about, but the hashtag paint cultist that we've been using since we started the show, it's the traction it's gaining is awesome, and it's a very eclectic mix of models you'll see on there. So again, hard to say what's the hashtag you could follow to see more of these miniatures. We'll try that one out, and again, if you see someone who's painted something you fancy, hit them up. One of the it's the whole point of a painting community, right? Is we enjoy tabletop games, war games, but we also enjoy just painting. So the idea is to try and bring sort of those worlds together. So yeah, I guess it's just ask people and hunt them out, and do hunt them out, because selling one model means quite a lot to small miniatures producers. And the more people buy of them, the more that people like us and others that are producing miniatures are able to invest in and produce in the future. So with regards to the paint cultist thing, for the rest of the questions, we're just going to cycle through a bunch of slides from all the people over the last few weeks who've been using the hashtag paint cultists. As I said, it's got to the point now where it's very difficult to pick a few for the end of the show. because there is just so many of them. It's always good fun when Matt's like, "Oh, do you want to send me some over?" I'm like, "Oh God, here we go, right?" And just searching through it, because I'll sort of check it out in the evening most days. But when you actually sit there and bang the hashtag on and go most recent, the fact that it's getting more and more and more scrolls every time is pretty full on. So let's start firing through the rest of the questions. First up, Daniel asks, "Oh no, I'll leave that one to do with favourite sandwiches." Tensor, I've got a question about mentality towards painting your best. Aside from appreciating amazing painting, I've always wondered, as people who have won at competitions such as Golden Demon, if you ever still find others' work so utterly perfect or devastatingly grimdark that it's actually intimidating. And if so, how do you then go about picking up a paintbrush and improving? So, as the winningest of us, Andy, you can take this one.
Pressure.
So, do you still find other people's work so perfect or rest of it that it can be intimidating, or is it just inspiring to you? Does it sort of push you on?
I don't know about intimidating, but definitely like, oh, I can't do that because of whatever reason. So yeah, definitely inspirational, and like, oh, this person is much better at me at this subject. Maybe I should focus on that subject for a bit. Like the one sort of in the semi-recent years was like female skin and busts, and I was like nervous about doing it, and I was like, right, let's attack that, let's do that sort of thing. So definitely that's inspirational, and seeing different like styles and things, because sometimes you're like, what should I do? And then if you see something you like something like from Kirill will always do some mental OSL situation, and I might be like, well, okay, like I'm not going to do it as good as Kirill, but I like how he's pushed the OSL effect and the NMM effect and use that. So you don't, I think if you like the style of something, you don't have to be bummed out if you're not going to do it as good quality maybe, but use the cool things like his palette's cool, I'll use that palette on something, I'll try that technique out or take something from it. So I think you should never get bummed out, because no matter what you do, anything in life, there's guys that are better than you, and just look at it and work out why you like it. And everything's so accessible now. Most people do tutorials, so if you see someone you like, there's probably a tutorial from it. So I think, has that answered the question? Has that answered that?
I think that was excellent, mate. That was really, really good. Let's jump on to the next one. Jonathan's asked, I've noticed that you guys tend to use Chaos Black Primer in your videos. Is that just personal preference, or is there something that you're not a fan of with airbrush primers? And a follow-up to that is, if so, what airbrush primers would you recommend? So, Rich, primer of choice. What you got?
Mine's actually Mechanicus Standard Grey as opposed to black. That is my personal favourite. But Chaos Black, I mean, for me, spray can over a airbrush primer, mostly ease of use. It's a great. If I'm spraying 40 infantry, that's a hell of a lot of airbrush time. The actual airbrush primer I find quite difficult through the airbrush sometimes. If you get that mix wrong, the consistency wrong, you're going to spend a lot of time stripping models or doing them again with
stripping the airbrush.
Airbrush, because it gets clogged up very, very quickly. There's some really good airbrush primers out there, and I'm not saying that I wouldn't ever use them, but purely for easy use, there are some fantastic coverage like spray cans, specifically Chaos Black. I just love the quality of the coverage on Chaos Black. I think is great. I use that for some stuff, but I prefer Mechanicus Standard Grey as my go-to, just for the coverage from grey plastic to it is really good, and you don't need a lot of it.
Yeah, that's fair. So up until about a week ago, I would have said, I love Chaos Black Primer. I only use it because it's so reliable. No matter what I'm doing, no matter what I'm spraying, no matter the conditions even. There's no worries with humidity and all that you seem to get. It just feels like Chaos Black is reliable. And then I had an absolute nightmare with it last week. And I didn't do anything different, so I don't really know whether I just had a bad can or something. But obviously threw a little hissy fit. And I've been really enjoying the products from Ammo by MiG recently. So I've ordered a few of those one-shot primers from them that you use in your airbrush. and I will give them a try, but I haven't yet. They haven't arrived yet, but they're what I'll be giving a try. If they're anything like their varnishes, they'll be fantastic. But I'll get another can of Chaos Black and give it a go, because it's convenience, I think, more than anything, isn't it? That's the trade-off. I probably, out of all of us, I use the Airbrush the most, and I love it, but it doesn't mean I use it for everything, and priming is it's just so much easier with a rattle can.
If you're using resin, is like, for me, resin, the Airbrush primer is more fragile on resin. Like it doesn't adhere or give a solid fix. I'm using Halford's grey primer at the moment in the spray can exclusively, and that's because I couldn't get hold of Chaos Black. But I'm actually enjoying it a lot because it sticks so well to resin. It's really matte and it's absolutely solid. And then I'm airbrushing a color over that. So recently I started our Woodsman model, and I did the rattle can with the grey Halfords, and that gave an amazing finish, and paint sticks to it so good after.
Well, it's a car primer, isn't it? That's an automotive primer, yeah.
Yeah, and then I just airbrushed Rhinox Hide all over, which was better than all black. Still really dark, but dark brown suited everything on the model. And yeah, the primer's fast, sticks really well, paint adheres to it very easily after, so it's win-win, and it's sandable as well. So airbrush primer, like, you can peel off like cling film. That's what I don't like. On plastic, I think airbrush primer is cool. So if you were painting one plastic model, like, and you were inside and it was raining, then airbrush primer is going to be king. But for me, painting a lot of resin non-Games Workshop models in the can, all the way for me. So
the rattle cans do get a bit annoying when it's -2 outside and pissing in.
Exactly right.
Or just windy and you're spraying like that far away from the model, it's all just going the wrong way.
I imagine though that, like, if you live in a block of flats or something, then the spray can's like terrible. If you got to go all the way down the bottom floor outside and not have anywhere to go, I guess having the luxury of not crazy temperatures and a place to go outside does make a difference. So
do what I do: open your window, stick one arm with the mod.
Don't. The culture of paint do not endorse that behaviour, nor putting the extractor fan on in the bathroom and doing it in there, nor especially the extractor fan over the cooker. So, even though some of those things might work. Right, next up, Bushy's asking, what's the best music to paint to? Great question. I love picking music for a painting project. If it's a pure painting project for pleasure, where I just want to enjoy the process, maybe more than the outcome, I find music is so important. I mean, we talk about this often. I'm not someone who tends to watch things while I'm painting. I prefer to either listen or just not have anything on, just sort of be quiet. But finding the right band or whatever for what I'm painting, absolutely love it. And like, for instance, like, I went back to a project recently, my Titans, and again, like, in my little notebook of the recipes and everything I did for them, I've got the music that I've had on when I've been painting them, and I just enjoy that side of it. With regards to what's the best music to paint to, I mean, that's personal taste, right? I mean, other than the fact that obviously it's probably Clutch, but other than that, it's open to interpretation. What about you guys? Movie soundtracks.
Good call.
I love it when Forrest Gump soundtrack comes on.
I agree completely with Henry. I have playlists on my phone that are named after the specific things I was painting at the time. So I've got like an Eldar playlist. I've got
nice.
Oh wow.
Like a Titan playlist, stuff like that. Anything that helps me immerse myself in the idea that I'm trying to accomplish with the model that I'm doing. So specifically, like just like Henry said, to be honest, about if it's painting for fun, I will put something on that if I'm imagining the scenario that I'm painting the miniature in, that's the music it'd be playing, or if I'm imagining it was in a film, that's the music it'd be playing. So, for instance,
right. It's just like Space Wolves. You're putting on Wardruna, right? You're just having that on. Endless, yeah.
So, like when I painted the tank earlier, I listened to the Fury soundtrack basically on repeat.
Nice. Sabaton. That's always a good one for Warhammer painting.
Yeah, but and as Matt said as well, also soundtracks. So like Hans Zimmer stuff. There's a band called Really Slow Motion that does some really ridiculously epic instrumental stuff. So yeah, it depends. If I'm painting something that's really detailed or is like a competition piece, I don't normally listen to music for it. I'll just be concentrating on what I'm doing, or I put a show on in the background. Same with if I'm doing commission work, it tends to be a TV show that I don't need to look at, because if I need to look at it, I'm not going to get any work done. But
you like to look.
God, the snooker annihilated me last week, man. Just trying to put like this. No, can't do it.
Yeah, I can't do music at all. Music's a no-go for me.
Yeah, you just endless episodes of Star Trek, right?
Because I really, really care about like music. I can't just like blank it out, and I have to put on something I really like, because I'm like, this song is terrible. But then if I put something I like on, I don't know, I just can't really concentrate. Like I listen to a lot of heavy metal stuff, and that's impossible to paint to, because I've tried painting with my sugar on in the background, and you're like,
so relaxed.
Yeah. So for me it needs to be like just voices. So like quite a mellow TV show where there's not a lot of noise. I just need to like calm, because I'll listen to so much music when I'm not painting, because I listen to music non-stop at work all day, headphones cycling somewhere. So for me, I don't really listen to music when I'm painting. It has to be a boring TV show. That's me.
Fair play. Great question. Fun to answer. Right, let's have a theory-ish question. I'm going to fire this one at you, Matt, with you probably having looked at the most high-quality paint jobs of all of us, given the spreadsheet admission the other week. So, this is from Max. Do you think a quality paint job is a combination of smoothness and contrast, or do you think one quality is more important than the other? He sets an example of a lot of traditional fantasy artists like Adrian Smith and stuff. They don't necessarily always blend everything together really smoothly and stuff. What do you reckon?
It's quite, it's quite subjective though, isn't it? Like what you can have some painters that don't consider smoothness to be the be all and end all, and then you have some painters that do consider it. For me, I'm moving into that sort of area of I don't look at the smoothness too much anymore. Like I'm trying to move away from having everything perfectly blended, every sort of no brush strokes, because it's kind of getting a bit boring for me, if that makes sense. Sterile,
isn't it?
Yeah, it's feeling very, very sterile, very neutral. There's no flavor or character in it. Yeah, I don't know.
So you're coming down on the side of things such as contrast or light placement, whatever, much more important to you right now than
now as I'm sort of progressing in my painting, that's where I'm kind of going. It's good light sources, good contrast, smoothness, yes, but not taking it so far as that you never get the model done. Something along
I think everyone has their own personal criteria, don't they, really, of what they look at, and that's important. And I don't think it matters which road you go down, smooth or whatever. It's just what are the merits of this piece, because something can be super technical and that's why it's cool, and then something can be super interesting and innovative and rough. So I don't care which of the criteria it's gone for, but I think something can just be good, right? And there's a, you can't quantify the variables that make something cool. It can be good because it's just an amazing idea and things like that, and then something can be super smooth. So I love it all.
It's quite fun though, isn't it? The fact that as you say, there are so many styles, yet we still just refer to it as sort of miniatures painting. So it's quite exciting that you've got all this mixture of expressions, I guess is the word, isn't it? And it's exciting. It is exciting. Another good question though, and I do like that. I think what Matt was saying as well is, I think this relates to one of the other questions, is certainly as I paint more and more as the years go by, personal taste changes a lot. And for me, it doesn't always change in the sense of what I want to do next. It may be that I'll be focusing on a particular style, and therefore all I want to look at is a completely different style, if that makes sense. Because you almost want a bit of it. I find it more if I'm really applying myself and studying to trying to get something to become better at something, right? A style of painting that almost now is not an escape. That is now a work, right? That's study and all the rest of it. So actually, I may well, let's say I'm working on, I really want to figure out how to do rust more realistically on a 1/35th scale model, whatever. Then actually, all I want to do is go and look at pictures of things like burrows and badgers, right? Or just sweet little old hammer or something like that. That's just way away. It's another cracking question. Let's move on to a quick one. Well, it's not really, it's two, so we'll put them together. Law Pocket and Chris McKenzie both got questions about oil paints. What do we think about working with just oils to paint miniatures? He's been having a great success so far, especially with blending and painting particularly challenging colours. And then Chris is saying, I'd love to hear a bit of chat about oils as about to use them for the first time. Enjoyed watching us use them on the video. He's got his oils, he's got his thinner. And there we go. So if you were going to use oils for the first time, which techniques would you use to get the most out of the experience? So you're already on the Patreon, Chris, so you've got a bunch of videos for you there. But we get this question a lot. And I would always say to people is get yourself a brown oil paint and get yourself an orange oil paint and get yourself a sort of either a black or a grey oil paint. And then just practice the simple things of pin washing. So by that, you mean you make a wash up with oil paint and you use it to bring definition into the model like you would a normal wash. And then the most fun I think you can have with oils that's got a very low sort of barrier to entry is weathering. So your brown and your oranges are just going to let you have loads of fun with mud and rust. But it's interesting that Law Pocket has said about using oils to paint the entire miniature. You were telling me, Andy, that a lot of the larger scale painters traditionally always worked in oils, right? They didn't use acrylics. It was especially like the historical stuff, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of the historical guys do. Like when you go to, it's funny because when you kind of go to the Monte Santovino show, there's two sides of the room, and one side's all historical and one side's fantasy, and it's like oil people, acrylic people. And I remember this one Italian, he's probably a really famous historical painter, but I have no idea. But he was like, "This is acrylics?" And I was like, "Yeah, like, what do you mean?"
But it's great because ultimately oil paints are an awful lot easier to blend together than acrylics are, and the large is to do with the working time that you have with the paint before it dries up. I know a good friend of ours, Josh, has been about the last year now. He's been painting a lot of his Alpha Legion stuff just using oil paints. He's been having great success with it. And we were having a chat the other day. Actually, he was like, I think maybe I need to go back to using acrylics a bit more because I want to know if I have actually progressed. But what I thought really interesting that he's achieved from that is, has his brush blending got any better with acrylic paints because he's used oils for a year? No, probably not. But what it's meant is that the time and energy he perhaps would have had to have spent on getting perfect blends and all that with his acrylics, he's been able to spend on studying other elements of painting. So whether that's color theory, light theory, that's side of thing. So I think there's certainly something to be said for using oils for that. To actually go. I mean, there's a reason that the Bob Ross stuff was always so popular, right? Because oils are a very, very forgiving paint to work with.
Happy little accidents.
Yeah, happy little accidents, right? Yeah. So yeah,
Dimitri Fresco uses oil paints a lot. He's probably the person who I know in the fantasy miniatures that uses them the most frequently and successfully. And he's he's done some videos that are really long on YouTube. So maybe if you don't mind, Henry, I can get you the link for that.
Yeah.
But to his gallery and to his videos on YouTube, because he's an amazing painter and he uses loads of oils. He does ridiculous high standard freehands all in oil. So he's super cool.
Has he done some Bretonian stuff? Is that one you know?
No, he's sort of like, he's very good friends with Kirill, and they kind of have similar aesthetics to their paintings. But yeah, he's done Sisters of Battle all in oils.
With like loads of fleur de lis stuff and all of this stuff. Very cool. Very, very cool. Oils, big fans. Thoroughly encourage anybody to give them a go. You're looking at about, I don't know, 20 quid buy-in for 3 or 4 colours and some thinner. And that'll last you forever, pretty much. Yeah. Really, really good fun. And something we're going to be doing a lot more on, certainly on Patreon, sort of talking about working with them. Andrew's got a question. What are our favourite unsung tools or paints? So, Rich, you can have a tool, not a paint.
Tool, an unsung tool. Oh.
This is where we find out who read the questions in advance.
I didn't.
And who did not. Yeah.
I did not. I didn't really think of a specific.
Right, I'm going for toothpick.
Okay.
Good call. Rich loves them as well.
Mine would be a cotton bud, like a Q-tip.
Yeah, that close second.
Definitely.
I've got it.
Is there a hairdryer? Oh no, a metal ruler. Okay, nice.
Metal ruler. Yeah, for like cutting. I've always got to make barriers and things. Cutting against that. It's got to be a metal one. Nice. I've used it a lot this week to make my water base. So, metal ruler.
One thing I've tried to get hold of and brand up Cult of Paint hairdryers. Fortunately, it's not as worthwhile as I hoped it would be.
Is that unsung though? That's like, everyone knows the hairdryer, surely.
Do they though? Do they?
What did you have, Matt?
I'm going to go with little grey tipped, those putty sculptor things.
Clay shaper things.
Clay shaper, yeah.
Not going to go wrong without having a few of those.
Yeah, it's true.
Hustle,
I like that. We'll come on to paints with a later question. But yeah, some goodies there. Right.
A good one if you want.
I'll go on then. One more.
Specific wire cutting tools so you don't wreck your nice clippers. So these are specifically for wire. So you don't and then you don't ruin your nice, really overly priced Citadel clippers. So
they are nice. They are nice.
Don't use the paper clips.
Exactly.
So was that awesome new pair of Tamiya clippers this week I saw? I was coveting. Might save up for them.
Don't cut your pinning rod with the nice.
Maybe paper clips is actually quite a good one.
Yeah.
Spending loads of money on pinning wire.
I always feel like Andy looks down his
nose
when I say I use paper.
Yeah. I couldn't possibly use a paper clip.
That's disgusting.
Tools of a peasant.
Yeah.
Right.
Pinning.
David and Sam have asked, how many projects do you tend to work on at a time? Do you focus on one to completion or do you jump around?
Oh, God.
Do you want
to?
So, my old handle on Instagram was Army of Test Models because for the life of me, I cannot stick to one fucking idea.
Where's the meme? Where's the meme?
Yeah, that meme. Yeah, the meme of different projects. He's looking back away from his girlfriend. That meme. That's just
Meme. The next meme of the week is going to be Rich. All right. The next meme of the week, we're putting him on.
Yeah, I'm a nightmare. I am a straight up nightmare for getting things finished because I come up with ideas, I get really into it, I buy in, and then I think of a new. It's not that I get bored of the idea as much; it's I tend to think of something else that I like a little bit more, or I see something that piques an idea in my head, and then I just try and go all in on that one instead. I have got a bit better in the last couple of years, but there was a sweet spot where I was, oh God, I was bad. I mean, I still butterfly oil all over the place, but if I do one model, I tend to actually finish that model and then go, oh, that was a fun model. I'll put it in the cabinet and then I'll forget this as an idea.
So before Rich cries, Matt, what about you?
Yeah, I'm kind of probably as bad as Rich. There's a lot of unfinished projects in the cabinet that I just went like really into, was like super into it for like a month, and then I went, I don't know how to finish this, and then just I leave it and start something new.
So yours isn't necessarily getting distracted by something else. It's not feeling
Yeah,
how to complete the
I get to
the
like
job. That's interesting.
I get to like a point and I'm like, right, I know if I do any more, I'm gonna mess it up in my mind and I want to take the paint off, so I'll just leave it and then it will never get finished.
It's interesting.
Mine are all army projects though. Mine aren't like individual like miniatures. I could deal with that. Mine's like, oh, I like this model. That is one model I've painted. I'm gonna start a 2,000-point army.
I think I'm the same with you, mate. Like if I start painting something, I usually finish it, but I hate it. Like 75% of the way through, I hate it. It's the worst thing I've ever done, and then that's ruined everything. And then I'll think about something. So, but at least it gets finished. But yeah, like you say, you just end up with random models everywhere. It was test models. I wish I could paint as quick as I can think about painting.
Yeah,
you know?
Everyone's like that, right?
Yeah.
So you can get 100 ideas. I don't know about you, Henry, but I think doing Patreon has made me not be able to butterfly, which is good because I have to finish the tutorial, because no one's like, okay, here's part 1 and you're gonna get part 2 in 6 months. It just doesn't work for Patreon. So I'm doing our Woodsman at the moment, and I will not do anything until the Woodsman's done. And I have discovered I way prefer that, because I find it very stressful having half done stuff, gathering dust, blowing the dust off to finish it.
Yeah, it's funny
I've changed.
I had the last 10 days or so I've been redoing the studio, just pulling the odd project, the rare ones that aren't quite finished, and just getting them done. Just that whole finished is better than perfect.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean scrappily finish it, but it kind of means, suck it up. This will be better. And this sort of leads us on to the next question, but you will be better for finishing this model. You know? So the next question was, how do you recommend this? What I was going to come to you with. How do you recommend dealing with mistakes? As Dave's like, I feel like between White Dwarf as a kid and then the amazing models we can see all around us at the moment, he wants every miniature to be perfect. Then he gets frustrated and loses steam when it's not. I 100% get you, Dave. 100,000,000%. I think it's discipline. We're going to have a show soon where we talk about motivation and that type of thing. I think there has to be an element of discipline with it, and it's understanding, as I said, you will be better for finishing that model, even if it's literally just because you then go to bed that night and you've finished something, and you'll get that little, not endorphin necessarily, but you'll just relax you a little bit more. I imagine as a competition painter or as a display painter, Andy, this is something you'll come up against, and I know you come up against quite often. How do you power through with it?
I kind of, because I do the one-to-ones a lot, I actually talk about this quite a bit. And I think so I'm teaching someone non-metallic metal quite intensely at the moment. So we're having a weekly lesson on non-metallic metal for like 9 weeks. That's all we do. And he's doing like one model. And I think when you paint, say, one element that's dominant, so like say it's mostly skin and you're painting the skin, I think when you've only done that element, you're looking at every problem with it and you've got nothing to compare it to. And I've had it where I'm like, I hate this bit of this model, and actually you finish the rest, or like almost finish and complete other elements, then by comparison it can look okay, because it's not, you're not looking at it in isolation, and actually over time you can be a bit more forgiving of your mistakes, and actually maybe when you've done all of that, then come back to that one element you weren't so happy with, and you maybe better tweak it after you've had a break and stuff. So I would say it's normally only one or two things people don't like, isn't it? So like, I really hate how I've done the skin, I hate how I've done this. So do it all and then see if you can adjust that element and come back to it. But unless it's a complete disaster, then I'd say always push through, because you'll always feel differently when it's finished and you've put it away. And some of the stuff that I really disliked in the heat of the moment, in your own little bubble you create while you're painting it. Then you put it on the shelf for a bit and go, oh, where was the mistake? I can't remember where that mistake was. It's fine. It looks great. So yeah, you got to finish stuff. Sometimes though, and I'm not I don't encourage this, but we all know we call it Wardle varnish, which is the stripper. But sometimes if you can be quite level-headed and go, okay, this isn't turning out how I want because of this, but I think if I approach it again and do it right, then I'll get it this time. And I have stripped stuff and learnt so much on the model that before, and then I do it that second time and I'm really happy with it. So I don't encourage stripping figures. I think you should finish it, but just try and stay level-headed with stuff, I guess. Don't panic.
Good answer.
It's easier said than done.
I like it. So super quickly, favourite sandwiches, Andy?
Come back to me.
Rich?
BLT.
BLT, nice. Matt?
Proper roast chicken sandwich.
Oh, okay, nice. Daniel, who asked the question, his was coronation chicken, and I completely agree with you, Daniel. That is
it's got to have loads of cheese.
King of sandwiches.
God,
you're having a cheese sandwich, brilliant.
But just as long as it's got loads of cheese in, and it's pretty cool. Like, I don't know, beef and cheese, egg and cheese.
Beef and cheese?
Whatever, as long as there's cheese, I'm okay with it.
You're right.
Right, Callum's asking, what is your least favourite model you have painted and why? Mine's easy. Mine is whatever I've just painted. I really don't like when I've finished a model. As I said, usually about 75% of the way through, I've really gone off it. Bit of self-loathing and then carry on to the next one. Whilst you're pondering that one, Callum, second question, what is the one piece of feedback you've gotten from a judge that has changed how you've approached miniatures painting? I think we can open that out a bit more, maybe, to a piece of feedback you've gotten perhaps from a peer or a judge that has changed how you've approached it. Just while the guys are thinking on those ones, touching back to what we chatted at a second ago with that sort of how do you get through it when you're making mistakes. I find having a decent sort of painting community is quite important. Like, I'll have certain mates that I will reach out to if I need technical help or critique or that kind of thing. But also I have a couple of friends I'll reach out to who will just say whatever you've done is brilliant and just give you a little, oh, that's awesome, that's rad, and then you're like, oh, that's why I'm doing this, just to be happy and chill out. So I think maybe get
I'm the opposite on that. I'd rather everyone give me brutal, honest feedback.
Do you not find that sometimes you just need that, the butt slapper guy? Yeah. You got this, champ.
I think
cheers, bro.
I think it's that type of feedback. It will come once you sort of got to a point of your piece.
I'm not saying you don't want feedback, Matt. You don't want feedback. You just want someone to tell you that the world is awful.
Agree. Yeah, agree.
And that you haven't ruined and wasted the last 100 hours or whatever.
That's what Firestrip's for.
Yeah, I do that to a point. So if I'm painting something, I want that like little buzz of I know someone's going to think this is cool. If it's a specific subject, I'll send it to somebody who I know likes that subject matter.
Right.
So say for instance, like if I was painting something for competition, I'd send it to Andy because I know he does loads of competitions and it'd be a great thing to talk to him about. Our friend Ben Mack, if I'm painting something like Imperial Guardy or Grim Darky or something like that, I'll send it to him.
Don't send that to me, mate.
Yeah, exactly. If I send some Grim Dark or something to Andy, I'm like, what the fuck is this? Why have we sent it? So yeah, I think picking your the people you get feedback or praise from, I think is really is important depending on what you want. Like if you just want brutal honesty, I'll just message Rich Gray and it's just like, what's wrong? And he'll just tell me, which is really helpful.
Rich Gray, one of the judges for the upcoming Miniatures Paint Open. So enjoy that.
Lovely feedback.
We've already got him on
the best kind.
I love
going to censor him when he does his.
I love his feedback because he's always 100% honest with it. Like. And he, he's such an experienced painter, so I think that's one of the reasons I send it to him. Because I think, yeah, exactly. I think, like you said, Matt, sometimes you do want feedback. You don't want someone to just say it's great. You're like, no, how do I progress? But then sometimes, alternatively, you do want someone to just not even like good feedback just to sort of buy into your enthusiasm. I think
that's it. Feed off their enthusiasm.
Yeah. Somebody, oh my God, that's such a cool idea. That's way more, I think, important than.
But it can make a big difference, right? Sometimes it really can. When you're looking at it and you hate it, and someone else sees it for the first time, and they're like, "Oh, that's cool." It's like, God, you know what? That's how I felt 2 hours ago. You know, kind of thing. Right, you've had enough time to think on whatever that last question was. Your least favourite model and why? Go, hit me.
Alariel.
Alariel. I knew you were going to pick Alariel.
Yeah. I was going to pick Sigvald.
I knew you were going to pick Alariel.
I was going to pick Sigvald, but then I remembered about Alariel.
My least favourite is the Telemann that I entered into Golden Demon.
Right.
That's really good.
Do you know what? No, I don't want to know why. I don't want to know why. I don't want to know why. I want a bit of. I will leave the mystique. Maybe we'll come back and talk about that.
Why.
Matt, what about you? Any that you really loathe?
Outrage.
I don't loathe the painting I did on it. I loathe the way I did some parts of it, because it was a Golden Demon piece, and those parts were the parts that the judges really didn't like, and I knew I wasn't going to do very well on them when it was entered.
Nice. So, let's move past the negativity. Come on, there's a good question though, Callum. Yeah. So we'll move on.
On the feedback though, from the feedback I had from would be one of the first Golden Demons I entered. I kind of, when I was painting something, there was always like a highlight of it. So there was there was one element of it that was my focal point. Mm-hmm. So whether it be like, I don't know, the shield or a bit of freehand or whatever, that would always be like the bit to look at because I wanted a focal point. But the best bit of advice I got, specifically for competition painting, was from Max, who was just like, you should be able to pick the model up from any angle, and the consistency of the quality should go through. So I would tend to find that in my competition pieces, I paint the most fun bit first. And that would be super good. And then towards the end, maybe if I had a deadline, I would maybe rush the last bit. And that cost me in competitions a few times because they picked up on that. So the feedback was, every element from the very first bit you do to the very last bit you do should have the same consistency.
Nice. Right, here's a good one. Martin has asked us, and this might take a little while, so we might not get through all of these, but subjective theory question. He knows our Patreon and the channel leads towards an emphasis on singular or small group competition pieces. But for the army painters out there, what, in your opinion, makes for a truly spectacular army? Can you think of a specific Games Workshop diorama or an army painted by someone? So a little bit like what we discussed a few episodes ago, I think, didn't we? We picked our sort of favourite armies from that time. Or a particular model painted at an event in years past that's really captured your imagination. Do you think you could describe what helps armies truly stand out as for tabletop presentation? So firstly, Martin, I think there's probably an entire show in that. And certainly my major focus with the tutorials and things we put out tends to be towards army painting, and the idea that army painting is not a negative term, and that actually creating an army that looks good is very much a skill in and of itself. It's often not simply a case of painting all the models as if you were trying to paint everything really well individually. That won't always make a fantastic looking army on the tabletop. But for me, the one that stands out to me still from an event I was at, a guy called Benjamin Wakefield, and he'd done this entire inquisitorial army in the Blanchitsu grimdark style, and it was the first time I'd ever seen a 2,000 point army done like that, and just the cohesiveness, the immediately you were just sucked into it. I wasn't looking at the technical things to do with it. It wasn't any of that. It was literally just, oh my goodness, where do I look next? What's the next cool thing that I'm going to find? And 5 minutes later, you sort of come back out of it, and I think that for me is what's going to make, I can, you used the word sterile earlier, one of you, when you were talking about sort of painting. And I think I can appreciate a good, clean, technically well executed army. I think Games Workshop sometimes is a good example of that. When you go up to Warhammer World and you see some of the armies in the cabinets and things, and you just think that's very nice, but you you move on. Doesn't stay with you. It sort of hits all the notes, right? But I've forgotten it by the next one already. For me, it's got to be the ones that have just ludicrous narrative running through it. I would always much prefer an army that I enjoy looking at narratively, which I guess is an odd way of saying it, rather than one that is just good at executing techniques.
It's theme, isn't it? Theme.
Yeah, that's a better way, isn't it? Right? Theme.
Get a theme. If it's your unique theme, even better. And then that consistency across the thing. And there's nothing more impressive than when you see a collection, because it's cool seeing a single model with a unique take. But when you've gone, okay, this is my theme, and you've managed to run with it across an entire army, it's one of the prettiest things, like the boats we were looking at, the crazy boats in the episode before. And you're like, I've never seen that before. It all matches, and there's an entire army of it. It's
then happens to be painted to a very high standard. But I think that's one of the other nice things is there are, I'm sure Benjamin won't mind me saying this, it probably wasn't technically as well painted as some of the other armies that were there that day. But that didn't matter. That wasn't the point.
Consistent, though.
It was. It
coherent, like you said. That's more important, isn't it?
It's exciting. Well, that's it, right? And don't get me wrong. If you're someone who just prefers to paint and by the numbers and just execute it well, that's great. I think the danger sometimes with that is there's always going to be, as you said, there's always going to be someone better than you. Whereas if you can try and impart a little bit of theme or a little bit of your own style, it doesn't even have to be your own style, a style on it, then all of a sudden it makes it stand out more to me. It makes it more unique. And that can simply be, it can be as small as something like, changing a well-known color on an army, eye lenses on a space marine, or hair on a orc armies are a great one. I know that Warhammer orcs are green and all the rest of it, but I love when I see them painted in a slightly different color, even if it's a different shade of the green. Straight away, it's standing out, isn't it?
Yeah,
I think for me, I agree completely with what you said. And technically, you can look at an army that's been painted incredibly neatly, but like you said, colouring in based on what was already there. I think I can find them, and I'm not trying to be mean, I can find them a little bit soulless in some ways.
Yeah.
After a while, or I'll look and go, that's really well painted, and then I'll move on. But I've seen some armies that technically wouldn't be as well painted, but the person that's done them has created a backstory for them. They've created a bit of fluff that they've written, down to like the transfers, and down to like the name. They've named the characters. They've worked out the vehicles have their own like markings on them. They do, or where they've been. All these little things that ground it in, even if it's not a real reality, it's something you've made up. Massively adds to longevity with a project. I think and I've personally done this, I've gone out to try and paint an army as well as I could paint it, and I got really bored of it, not because of the painting itself. It was just the fact that there wasn't anything else to it. It was an army that I wanted to paint really well, but I didn't come up with anything else for it. I just thought, I like these models, I want to paint them as well as I can, and I want an army of them. For a few, it kind of got a bit boring, where I've got armies that aren't painted particularly well that I really want to keep adding to, because I've come up with the story for them, and I want to see where that story kind of goes.
I think that's it. It would be very interesting to hear the opinions, perhaps, of people that don't consider themselves painters.
Yeah.
Because I wonder if the reason we're agreeing on this is because we consider ourselves creative people.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that is influencing it. Whereas perhaps someone who for whatever reason just has zero interest or cannot fathom getting paint on the models, perhaps to them seeing a really neatly executed army actually is a very pleasing thing for them. It would be interesting to know.
I'd really like to see
that goes back. Sorry,
you go. I was just saying, I'd really like to see the opinion of somebody who would like, they'll start an army and they'll just copy a game like an heavy metal paint job.
Box art wanker, I believe, is the hashtag.
Yeah, but they'll copy that. Nice. They'll copy it to the letter for like the entire army, and I'd love to just find out why they want to do that. Like, I love that though. I think it's cool, but I don't know. for me, and this is always it's massively it's a personal thing. Like put my own stamp on the miniatures, make them mine.
Yeah.
So like they're my miniatures. It's my story. It's my
And that's what you want to see in someone else's.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
And that's what I look for. But obviously, that's looking at it from my perspective. So I'd love to see why other people like I'm going to paint Ultramarines and they're going to be painted exactly the same as Games Workshop paint them. Yeah, I just don't understand it, but I'd love to know why.
It's a great topic.
That goes back to sorry, mate.
No, mate. You carry on.
I was going to say it goes back to what I said earlier about something can be cool for different reasons, and I think an army can be. I'm going to do Ultramarines, heavy metal style, and if I saw that, I'd be like, "That is awesome!" Like, is it 05 Kim who does like the? Yeah. If I saw his army, I'd be like, "Oh my god, this is legit!" And he's not come up with any unique ideas, but it's cool for that reason because of execution. And then another guy go with a mental theme, and the painting's not as good. Whatever you want to say, I don't think that matters. But it's just and I think for all of those things is consistency. Take your theme, even if it's straight off the box art, or if it's a mental idea, but just run with it and be consistent. I think that's the underlying. I think everyone would agree on that, no matter their standpoint. If it's consistent throughout, it's going to look great.
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, there's so much discussion around painting good armies, because you then go off and go, well, do you know what? A good basing scheme can elevate an army and can ruin an army. I've judged enough sort of best army comps at events, and you need to bear things in mind if that's what you're shooting for. The chances are it's going to be terrible lighting. You're probably not going to have a choice, right, at the table. You might be told, you've got to display them on the gaming boards over lunch or whatever. So, I've got my Space Wolves with their snow bases sat on the lava board, or whatever, right? So there's lots of things to consider. And there's so many discussions we're going to have in the future about these types of things. But thanks for sort of kicking it off, Martin. But I think our take home really is for us, what makes an army really stand out is a little bit of individual, the creator's stamp on it, and picking a theme and just going with it across the board. We're not going to get through all the questions, guys, but what I've done is sort of saved a bunch that are very similar sort of area, and generally that's covering developing as a painter. How have we developed as painters, and also so that's something that we're going to talk about in an upcoming show. So we'll just finish it out with a couple more. That's a really good one. I can't wait to get to that one. This is from Dan E. Hendog Millionaire and the Purple Power Ranger. Sometimes
this is
Chubbly Walnuts. No, sometimes highlights come out like you thought. Sometimes they're chalky puddles that stain your miniature with a watermark of failure. So, sometimes midtones layer up really nice. Sometimes they're the paint equivalent of fruit-flavoured water, not Tres Bon. It feels to me that some paints, or perhaps some colours, don't respond the same as others, even when they're mixed with water to the consistency that you require. Every now and again, this really messes them up. Are such discrepancies the paints themselves and how they're made, or can such issues be overcome by how you use that paint? It's a great question. It has a fairly simple answer, and that is that, not all paints are designed equal. A lot of compromise has to be made by a manufacturer if they wish to create anything more than a very narrow range of paints. And a lot of that will be the characteristics of how the paint looks, but also how it behaves and how you use it. It's why we've always been massive advocates on classes, or whenever people ask us questions, is try different ranges out. All manufacturers have got great paints, and all manufacturers have got terrible paints. And largely that's to do with their compromise. It usually means that the terrible paints are what has suffered from that compromise that's allowed them to make 80% of the range really, really nice. So if you can sort of pick and choose your paints from the ranges, would you say that's fair, Andy?
Yeah, I've got some bits to add if you don't mind.
No, well, yeah, this might or might not be something we've spent several years now.
I'll try and keep it concise, but one of the main things is how the paint looks. There's so many variables that you just kind of need to be relaxed sometimes, because how much water you've added to it, how much you load in the brush, how much pressure you apply, all affects how the paint comes off, goes on, dries, and then you have to gain experience to make that all work. There's just all these things, like dilution, load, brush size, brush pressure, brush stroke, and that will affect everything. And you actually have to apply different things to different paints. And the other thing I just wanted to say quickly is most paints we use are blends. So that means they're not a pure pigment. So the Chimera paints like this, warm yellow, they're advertised as a pure pigment paint. And what that means is when they've manufactured it, they've only chosen one pigment, and it says on the back PY83. Whereas if you get something like this gold yellow, that's a blend. And we don't know what's in that because it might have some black, some white. And that means when you dilute it or add it in other things, the behavior is not predictable. So if it's got more white in it to make it more opaque or to change the value, then it might behave in a strange way. So basically, most model paints are a blend, and we don't know what's in them. So we have to gain experience with them to know how it mixes, behaves, applies, and all that stuff. But when you see a paint like a Chimera and it says pure pigment, that just means there's only one color in there. There's not loads to make a specific tone, which is why they're quite predictable to use and stuff. So I'll stop there because you could go on forever.
Yeah, get us on for this one. And it's certainly something why when we do our tutorials is we'll always try and say why we're using a specific paint. Sometimes a specific paint is important, but a lot of the time it isn't. And people will go, I haven't got that paint, what can I use, so we'll, in those instances, we will say, well, go out and buy it or go and find it because it's worth it. A lot of the time, because of this characteristic. Just try and be open-minded and talk to people. I mean, the fact is, Dan, you're on the Patreon, you've got constant access to paint nerds. So just make sure you use those resources. The amount of awful models we've got, so maybe you don't have to have as many. So we're working with it, but also what a lovely phrased question. So great use of language there by Dan. So I think I'm going to leave it there with the questions and say, guys, the other ones fall into a nice sort of category that we will address in a future show. So let's close out the show with our usual look at a few more of the hashtag paint cultist pictures. This is something we started back when we began the show, the idea of a hashtag, so we could keep an eye on what everybody who's watching or listening to the show has been producing. And that's hashtag paint cultist. You can find this on Instagram, a few of the other social medias, but it's largely on Instagram. It tends to be what we refer to. Something we take a look at every week, and I would really recommend that you guys follow that hashtag because the breadth of work, as I said earlier, the different types of models that you can be exposed to is just fantastic. Right range of painters, right range of models. Happy days, very, very enjoyable when you've got a spare 5 minutes just to flick through. So let's crack on. I picked a few more out this week. I know we've been cycling through a load of them, but I just picked out a handful that I wanted to show off to the guys because they really did catch my eye as I was looking through them. So what's up first, Matt?
Hey.
So this is Josh that I was talking about earlier. And one of the reasons I wanted to pick this was, so referring back to the question earlier, this model is largely painted with oils. Josh has been really, really enjoying his painting over the last year, done an awful lot of Alpha Legion, and now he's doing some White Scars. So it's really nice to see something different from him. As nice as his
Aren't they Alpha
are,
Legion?
Well, I
isn't
encourage
that an
everyone
Alpha Legion
to go and
symbol
read,
on the
the
stump?
Alpharius book. It's fantastic. Mike Brooks did a great job. But yeah, as did Josh with the paint of this, just showing sort of what can be done. I think that might be a third-party head. Maybe he's got on there. Don't recognise it. But yeah, very, very cool. Go and give him a follow. Very, very active, very prolific, and an excellent member of the painting community. Always a very encouraging guy. What's up next, Matt? Well, so speaking of models that aren't warfare related, this is just cool. it's obviously Anthony Hopkins, recent Oscar winner, I think, as well, isn't he? So yeah, and cool. I like the waistcoat on this as well. It's just a fun model. Never seen it. No idea who it's by. And again, you know, we're in the industry, so you know it can be tricky, can't it, sometimes to sort of find producers.
It's pretty crazy now that there's loads of busts that are coming up that are copies of famous people. Like, imagine being that person.
Yeah.
If you have in the hobby, like I know Henry Cavill's in the hobby. Imagine if he just found a bust of himself one day. Like, this is weird.
There is one, there isn't there? Yeah. There is one.
People have 3D printed it, haven't they, and stuck it on. Yeah. Well, it's going that way, right? 3D printing yourself as a D&D character and all that sort of thing. Yeah. But just very nice. And this is what I'm on about. You know, one picture it's a Space Marine, the next picture it's just this cool ass bust of Anthony Hopkins. So yeah, what's up next, Matt? Speaking of, this one just stood out really. One, it's a cracking choice of colours, and also I just felt it's just a very nice sort of modern heavy metal take on way of painting. I just thought it stood out really nice. Speaking about what Rich was saying earlier about executing all of it equally.
I love the red,
particularly like the eye lenses on this guy as well.
Yeah, it's great. Nice use of
the shield.
Blood Angel symbol as well. Good choice.
But yeah, just really nice. This sort of stood out to me. You know what we were saying earlier about painting by numbers? I feel like this is taking that quite clean colouring in painting style and just giving it that little bit of character. Do you know what I mean? So it's got a bit, like you say, Rich, it could be something as simple as using some different transfers and stuff. But this, you can already tell this person gives a shit about painting their models, if that makes sense.
Loads of work in this, isn't there?
Yeah.
Loads of effort.
Yeah. So just really enjoyed it. I know it's a Space Marine, but they look rad.
Everyone loves the Space Marine.
And red and black and white. They're just
Is it a successor chapter he's made up, you reckon, or is it a known successor?
It's known, but the cool thing is though, you want to find that out, right? Just by the way that you painted it, it's like, actually, I want to know a little bit more. Like, have you come up with this? Is it a successor chapter that's existing? Yeah, very cool.
Really nice.
Like,
what's up next, bud?
Yeah.
Oh, spectacular.
Lovely.
Very good.
I think my favourite part about this is the hands being a different colour. I love it when the hands blend. And like Rich, you did it fantastically on that big ass Troggoth, whatever it's called, dank meme Troggoth.
Oh yeah.
Thanks,
and I just that's probably my favourite thing you've done. And I really, really like it when you've got that pale skin and it fades into this real dark around the hands or maybe around the nose or things like that. Other than the fact, obviously, this is exceptionally well painted as well.
Base is great as well.
Yeah. Sort of really gave me a bit of a Soper vibe, but I think maybe that's more to do with the palette than the actual painting style.
And the model, just because that's his most recent one.
Yeah, that's true.
But
yeah, just absolute beauty. This one.
Yeah, it's gorgeous presentation.
Really, really nice. And then lastly, I think, just finishing it off. This is Adam. He's a good guy, very nice painter. I know he really enjoyed following Andy's White Scars tutorial from back sort of summer last year. He's been following with his recent stuff and been loving it really. So it's just nice. It's always nice when you see someone who's gone, that tutorial is really useful, but then they've gone away and actually used it for stuff.
I think that's mental, to be honest. I still can't get over
it's fun, isn't it? Like I've had seen a few Dark Elder stuff popping up recently. I was like, hang on, that looks a bit like that thing I painted, and then someone's gone, use this tutorial. It's very rewarding. makes up for all the arsehole comments that you get on things. So yeah, keep
you paint like my sister.
Keep going with the army, Adam. It's it's awesome. It's awesome. So that's it for the picks, I think, for Paint Cultists tonight. So I hope you've enjoyed the show tonight, everyone. Say a little bit different. We're doing these Q&As. We'll probably do them once every, I don't know, 10, 15 episodes, something like that, as and when it feels like a good thing to do it. But it was certainly nice to be sort of able to flip between subjects and sort of do a bit of soapboxing on some of them. If you ever do want to get in touch with us, we're on all the usual social media platforms, possibly even TikTok soon if Andy lets me go on there. I've heard about this thing. Apparently it's very popular. Very so but for now, it's just looking at YouTube, Instagram, email, Twitter, all that sort of thing. You can always get hold of us, whether you want to talk about upcoming classes, whether you want to talk about us producing tutorials for things, or anything you might want to get in touch with us. Do reach out to us. We're doing this very much because we want to be part of this community and keep it growing. And it's just going brilliantly. There's amazing models coming out, amazing products coming out, and just more amazing art. This last year, I don't know whether it's because we've been online more than normal, but there just seem to be so many good painters popping up now. The standard of painting across the board just seems to have risen and risen and risen, I'm thinking anyway. But
blossoming
Andy,
hobby.
It is. It's a good time. It's a good time. Golden age, right? Thanks very much for joining me, Andy, Matt, Rich. Awesome as ever. Thanks very much to the Patreon chat for waffling away while we've been waffling away and usually arguing about something. So it's always good to see who's kicked off in there. A few people thinking that black 3.0 might be that super dark black we saw at the top of the show. And thank you very much if you're watching this back later on YouTube. Remember to hit the like button, stick something in the comments to tell us you're enjoying it and what you might like to hear from us about in the future. So we'll see you next time.
Ciao.